Yeah, I really have to say I'm grateful to my friend Jan that he invited me, because this gave me one more reason to be in this wonderful Habsburg city of Prague. I know about some delicate relation to the Habsburgians, but this is history. Today I think we can live with Karel Schwarzenberg close to Graz, in the Styrian Mountains, in Murau, and also here in Prague. So no problems. Inshallah, this will be the same in the future. Anyway, he said, I'm a born Austrian. I grew up just at the northern rim of the Alps. I'm now living at the southern rim of the Alps, as the people from the northern side say, at the Balkans. This is south of the main water ridge of Austria, south of the Alps. This is all Balkan Peninsula. But anyway, no, we still feel as Austrians there, and not yet as Balkan people in the closer sense, despite the fact that the good thing about living in okay. The good thing about living in Graz is that you are down to the Adriatic Sea in 1.5 hours on the highway. This is nice. From Prague it takes a little bit longer. From Prague it also takes longer up to the Baltic or to the North Sea, even from Dresden. And when I retired some 6 years ago, in fact, from TU Dresden, I thought living expenses were lower than in Austria, still Ostdeutschland, East Germany, a little bit, not a lot, but it takes 5 hours to get up to the Baltic Sea. And then you are at the Baltic. And from Graz, in 1.5 hours, I'm down in the Adriatic Sea. Now we have already 19 degrees. They're nice for swimming, for a fresh, but for a nice swim. I still remember when I was in high school, close before finishing high school. It was early in the morning, in the late 60s. You will exactly know when it was. When I was in the train down, during a weekend, down to some rock climbing in the Alps. And that was the age when we had all these transistor radios, the small little, the first portable radios. And I was in the morning train with all my climbing equipment, rope and pitons and all that stuff. And then a guy was there with this little radio saying, the Russians, the Soviets are in Prague. And I knew Prague still during the communist time and then later, and this was really a shock for me. And in my Prague, in this beautiful place, despite all the political conditions, it was sort of peaceful. And all of a sudden, there were riots going on in Prague. So this was really something. And inshallah, Václav Havel, who also is half Austrian, we say, he spent a lot of time in Vienna, and due to other people, eventually we have today's conditions. This is to my relation regarding Prague. Regarding mountains and cartography, having grown up at the northern rim of the Alps, I always had a strong inclination to the mountains. When I moved to Graz for my first studies, which was geology, I had to earn some money. And that is why at the earliest possibility, I have to rename it, because basically it has the same name like this, but this is the copied one. So just a second. Check if you can play this. If not, because then it doesn't. Strange. Anyway, so I had to earn some money, and this is why I underwent the training to become an official certified skiing instructor and a certified mountain guide. And this gave me the possibility to join my passion, my interest for mountaineering, for alpinism. One more thing I'd share with Professor Kropacek. And my scientific interest in rocks. And to earn some money, to earn my living, yeah, because my dad passed away very early prior to my studies, and my mom was not that rich, so I had to earn my living, and ski instructor and mountain guide work was ideal for that. Wait, what happened here? I don't know what happened, strange, because before I had it. This one is it. And here it works. Ah, you made a connection. Oh, okay, I see. Oh, sorry, this was no Czech music. It was neither Austrian, no Mozart, no Bach, but it was further east. Can you stay for a few minutes? I will come to this at the beginning of my presentation. So in 5-10 minutes, and if it works, then, yeah? Anyway, so, and also mountain guiding brought me to various parts of the world, and you will see here examples from the Alps and also from other places around the world. Now, what I'm showing to you is a sort of an Arbeitsbericht. It's just a sort of work report of some 50 years of mapping in the mountains. And is this an academic lecture? Is it worthwhile? Does it fulfill the standards of an academic lecture? Just telling some blah, blah, blah. In 1950 I was here, in 1960 I was there. I would be hesitant to believe that if I were you. However, last year, a professor from the University of Applied Sciences in Berlin, Professor Matthias Möller, who is also known by Jan Kropacek, by name at least, he invited me. He said, Manfred, can you give us a block seminar for one day, just telling the students about your experiences and telling our students about why it's worthwhile not just to go with blinders through academic life, but maybe to look a little bit left and also look a little bit right, to open your mind, to be open-minded. And the echo of this lecture, where I just gave some blah, blah, blah talking, no videos, no PowerPoint slides, just I gave expressions from my work life. That was evidently pretty successful, and this made me also agree when he said, Manfred, can you, yeah, why not? Maybe you can learn a little bit, and whenever you have out of my presentation, and whenever you have only on. Aha, nice. This makes things easier. Mm-hmm. Why does it not work? And I do ask you to ask as many questions as possible. And whenever you want to interrupt me, I'm telling this in particular to, say, Asian participants of this presentation. Don't behave like, for instance, in India. Just say, Manfred, I have a question. Please, interrupt me. Ask questions for your own benefit. Otherwise, anyway. Be it radar, be it the technology of, I don't know, ground penetrating radar, whatever. Well, boasting, 50 years of cartographic adventures and still loving maps. Crazy guy. Here's the proof. Is this a pointer? No. Is it supposed to be one? Thank you. Now it works. Okay, thank you. 7th of November, 1970. I was wrong, not 50. 52 years! At least 51 years. So and these are examples of my first mapping experiences in the Southern Alps. Very, very much detailed. You see the scale here, 15 meters, 4.5 meters, and some remarks, geological mapping. And then, eventually, in 1974, I got the invitation to join a conference to, I don't know what happened here. No, it's already correct. I got the invitation for a conference to Afghanistan. And you have to imagine, this was in 74 for an Austrian scientific, I'm talking more about that, expedition to Afghanistan, where all the hippies were on their way to India, to Rishikesh, to Agnivad. And they made a stopover in Kabul. This was beautiful, peaceful, Western style Afghanistan, in the 70s. Long before some people from Moscow got there and some other guys from the United States. So my impression of Afghanistan, I also experienced the war, I have to say, because I was dumb enough to go up here to Khyber Pass during the wartime, and I actually got into a pretty bad shooting there. And the other thing where I experienced the war was up here at the border. Anyway, but this was still beautiful Afghanistan, and I'm going to give you an impression. I hope to give you an impression with this video. And now he left too early. I said he should wait for a while, but let's try. This does not work. I have to go to another one. Sorry. But this gives you some a sort of escape. It should work with this one, inshallah. Na, warte, ich kann's hier. Because now I go to 50%. Hopefully this works. We shall see. But I promise by tomorrow still a little bit too loud, huh? Anyway, what you saw here is the mountains of, I mean, this is even higher quality than on the screen here. You got a little bit of impression of this, this expedition, how to approach Afghanistan, and this is at the end of the roads, and then we had a 3 days walk into our mapping area, the Afghan Pamirs, and in total I have to say I spent there close to 4 months of my life, and actually really some of the most impressive months I ever had. Last not least, I got to know a lady who is now here in the Altstadt of Prague due to this expedition, because there was also a biologist, and he had a very, very beautiful young sister. And when we came back, I said, "Can't you introduce me to your sister?" And yeah, now we are married 45 years. Okay, anyway, this was a very short overview of this expedition, which in mountain cartography still ranks pretty high nowadays. That high that I was asked to produce a scientific film about this expedition. There were actually 2 expeditions, one in 70 already, a pre-expedition, and one in 75. And this finally ended in a 100 minutes film, which I also have here. Yeah, part of this you will see here. Don't be shocked, because this is actually digitized 8mm analog film. So the resolution is not the very best, but I'm now giving you I'm now giving you a little bit a more detailed impression of what we did there. This would actually also be with music, but anyway, we can have it without music, and I'm going to give you the... See, this was our multidisciplinary team. We had a lot of material, so we asked our embassy for a house in Kabul, and this is in the garden of this house at the periphery of Kabul. And he was an ethnologist, for instance, and then eventually we still had to buy some food and stuff. The truck came, and with this truck eventually we planned our trip to the northeast of Afghanistan, to the so-called Wakhan corridor, which is between Tajikistan and Pakistan. This guy, you know, it's me. Many people didn't, even my wife didn't recognize me when I was there in those days, in the Chai Khana, which is a tea house in Afghanistan. And here I tried to push a little bit because the engine of the truck was not strong enough, but you see I succeeded in pushing the lorry forward. Anyway, kidding. The guy here in front of, this is always me, and you see our whole group of some 12 people working there. We had glaciologists, biologists, architects, geodesists, of course, surveyors, last not least. And I thought it's interesting, in particular for the younger ones, to see how in those days the main roads were. I know still in the Himalayas you have some areas where you have similar roads nowadays, but those were the highways in those days. Either you went by foot, by horse, by yak, or by one of these heavy lorries. And actually one day it broke down and we had a 2 days rest. Yeah, anyway, so those were the conditions which we met when we approached our target area. In interestingly enough, this was a broken bridge, and we tried to renew it a little bit. Did you see how the pole fell down? Huh? So everybody had to get off. It was only the driver who eventually tried to cross. This was in a better condition already. But still, it was quite an adventure. And when you come from here, from Czechoslovakia in those days, or from Austria, and then you were really shocked about these conditions. You can imagine. And very soon you will...
Maybe it will be worthwhile to notice there was similar expedition from the Czechoslovakia in 1970s to Tiruchmir.
Right, exactly.
Half mountaineering expedition and half scientific.
Yeah.
And there are also biologists and
but they were on the Pakistani side. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also used some of their material. So the people from here also experienced these things, and also some Polish were going there already in the 70s. We got stuck in this river. What to do? So I think it took 3 or 4 hours until eventually, you see, we were able to push it a little bit, and now, fingers crossed, yeah, we succeeded. Hooray, hooray. Eventually we made it. So, but this is just one out of many instances where we said, whew, this is not so easy. Eventually, after, I think it was 8 or 9 days, we reached the end of town. This is one of these serials, as it's called in the local language, a yard at the end of the road. And then the only means of transport was donkeys, few horses, and yaks. And we had a mixture of all 3 of them, and eventually went eastward. Where exactly we went, we will see later when I'm showing you the maps. Yeah, this was our shower, our bathroom, nothing else but a few small creeks at the side creeks who entered the main Wakhan Valley. And here you see, I mean, we had a lot of material because just think of the geodesists. Here you see the tripods for the surveying. So I guess we had 3 or even 4 theodolites with us. Yeah, 3, I guess. And eventually we reached our base camp near Sahat in the east of Wakhan, and the porters or horsemen got paid, and of course he was one of our major people of most interest. He was our medical doctor, and everybody had wanted some tablets. Yeah, the shoes of the locals, not our standard actually. And like in the remotest places of the Himalayas, maybe today not exactly, but I remember when I first went to Nepalese Himalayas in 78, it was still a little bit similar. 3 years later, after 75. And then from the major base camp, we moved up to the advanced base camps, and this is in one of the advanced base camps. Also, everybody is relieved because the work is done. They had carried all these heavy boxes with some 40 kilos, up to 40. 40 was the maximum. Also for us as the scientists, we decided not to carry more than 40. I still felt young, of 24, and I once had 41.5 kilograms. But this, of course, we had a balance, and we weighted our rucksacks and our baggage, but this was a lot. First time space food from NASA. This was astronaut food. Dried, very light, and you just had to melt some snow and add it and eat it. And this is one of our surveying teams checking out for a baseline for triangulation. Anyway, this is how it was, and I can already nowadays tell you Professor Kostka doing some surveying, that we had baselines up to not far below 6,000 meters. And at that elevation it is already a little bit tricky. You always have to have your mental checklist that you are not forgetting something. Sometimes you just made a measurement, but you didn't take a note. Everything was still analog in those days, so you didn't have a digital backup anyway. So, yeah. And from time to time, they came down to our base camp, which you saw here, nicely located aside a lake. And of course, there our medical doctor had always a lot to do. You can see it here. This was something which we frequently saw with the locals. But lucky us, we as the expedition members, we never had real problems. But many of the locals, the Wachi as they are called, came to us. Here once again you see the beautiful setting of our lake, of our base camp beside this lake. I, as a geologist, was, in contrast to the surveyors, to the geodesists, and to the other people, even the biologist always had some other, or went with some other people. I was by myself, and I had to touch an area as wide as possible to do my geological mapping in the mountains. And this is why I eventually was, for 90% of my stay in the Pamirs singly. That means without Austrian colleagues, but only with a local guide, porter. Let's call it a porter, because I had no real guides, and also their alpinistic experience was close to zero, because they love to live in the valleys, but up the mountains there are the evil spirits, and this is not the best. We rather stay in the valleys. So, but this is to tell you that during these weeks, 8 weeks or whatever, in the field, I was mostly by myself. And here you see, this is the province of Badakhshan, and this is this corridor of Wakhan, which was once upon a time generated as a buffer zone between what was then still India, the British Empire, and the Russian Tsar Empire, which in those days was a state called USSR. And you people know what that still meant. This was the Soviet Union, SS, Soviet Union. And to the south, it was not India anymore, but it was then the state generated during the Second World War. It was Pakistan. So in between USSR, the communist Soviet Union, and Pakistan, there was this corridor of Wakhan. And part of this corridor, this little yellowish area, this was our study area, but based on the knowledge of this area, extrapolations could be made to a wider range. And if you see here, there was a map generated at a scale of 1 to 25,000. So a detailed map showing the vegetation, done with my later brother-in-law, who was a biologist with speciality on vegetation science, and me mapping the geology. And here you see part of this map. The subdued tones, colors are geology, and those with the strong colors is this little vegetation at an elevation. You see camp exploration, Pamir 75, 4,430 or 90 meters. So pretty high, 30 meters, 4,500 meters. The base, this was an advanced base camp, and from there we still went up. So this might have been between 3,800 and 4,000 meters here. There's not a lot of vegetation anymore. However, a lot of rock to map. So this was a very detailed map. However, based on that detailed knowledge of geology, I was then able, here you see some other details. This is not the geological map. This is also the vegetation and geology map. However, I said geological map because what you see here is strange banks of marble, beautiful white marble. This is all schists and slates and some granites, the reddish stuff, and all of it, and marble. How come? So a very important geological feature, and it's up 4,200 meters and 3,300 down here. So you're not just saying, I just walk up there and do some mapping. You don't do this. However, once you have some basic knowledge in photogrammetry, terrestrial photogrammetry, you can go over here, slightly up the hill, make a baseline here, make stereo photography of this slope here, vice versa, you go up a little bit up here, make stereo photography of the other slope. And then you are able to make a very detailed map like this one of these small banks of marble, what I did. And according to international remote sensing geologists, this is supposed to be only the second case worldwide where terrestrial stereo photogrammetry was used for geological mapping. There should have been one case somewhere in the Andes, I don't know exactly where, but a colleague at TU Vienna told this to me, and another guy in Santiago de Chile corroborated this, but I don't know the guy's name. Evidently, I was only the second one, but it was a nice experience. And you young guys don't know how it was previously. Today the computer does it. In the old times, do you still know how that was?
I was doing it as a student.
Yeah, then you still know. Yeah. We are talking about stereo restitutions. You had a mark, you had to place it on top of the virtual surface, and then you had to make to lead it along the same elevation, yeah? And this is how you made your elevation contours eventually. And then you went 10 meters down, same again, and this is how you manually generated the elevation contours. Today, you press a button and say, elevation contour, there it is. So, and this is how I did the mapping here. But nice experience. History, scientific history. Okay. What I still wanted to say, the one was a 25, we then make a break and you can check the maps here, a 25,000 map. This is the detailed map which I talked about. And then here is the other map, which is a pure geological map. It says, yeah, geological map it says. And this covers a by far wider area. You will then see which area is exactly covered. It's also here. And it covers a much larger area based on the very detailed knowledge of my field mapping area. This mountain here is a different one. It's close to 8,000 meters high, and it is the mountain just mentioned by my friend Jan. This is Tiruchmir. Summit 7,708 meters, pretty high. I didn't summit it, but I rambled around for mapping. Here you see where we went. We approached the Vahan via Sebak, Ishkashim, touched the Amu Darya valley there, and then went up to Kalay Panja, the end of the road, and then 3 days to our base camp up here. Let me very briefly go back, and here you once again see this is Ishkashim, and this is the end of the road, and here was our mapping area.
Could you point on the...
Aha! Yeah, because before it was such a bad quality. Can it? No.
Or you can use the mouse on your computer maybe to point.
Maybe this is... Can you see it? Ah, yeah. Okay. So this is, we came from here via Sebak to Ishkashim. Then this was the end of the road here. This is in Kalebanja. And from here to here, only this little bit. I mean, here you have got the scale. This shows 50 kilometers. So it may say it was 50 kilometers. From here to here, it took us 3 days. 3 very, very hard days with yaks, horses, and donkeys. Anyway, this is this mountain Tiruchmir, which is not a border summit, but which is as a total located, as you see it here, which is totally located in, does it work? Can you see it? Yes. Yeah, you can see it a little bit. Here's the border. Here's the second highest, Noshak, 7,500, and here's Tiruchmir, 7,700. And years later, I got the chance to make a geological mapping there, however, based on a lot of weekend mapping of a friend of mine. I had a friend, an Austrian geologist, who worked further east in the Gilgit area, which is in the northeast of the Pamirs here. This is Gilgit, and to the west this is Chitral. And this is even better maybe. Here you see Tiruchmir, and this all here up close to K2, this is on Nanga Parbat, this is all Gilgit. And here you see Chitral, so the area between Tiruchmir and north of Peshawar, this is called the Chitral province, or whatever. An interesting fact. Why is the boundary between Pakistan and India interrupted between here and China? Who knows? Strange enough, no map indicated. You know? Like today, it's not yet settled. So it's a little bit, the Chinese are claiming terrain, the Indians are claiming terrain, and yeah, one of these ridiculous, how is it, no, we don't call it war, how are we calling now? Military action or something, huh? We have no wars in our world anymore, only military actions. Well, here you see the general, and the Vakhan corridor again. In those days still Soviet Union, today Tajikistan. And here you see in detail the area of Tiruchmir. Down here is the capital of the Chitral province, called Chitran town. Today they would call it Chitral city, right? I'm showing you this because later on we will also move down to this area here and the valleys to the southwest of Tiruchmir. Here is this mountain of Tiruchmir, which is really impressive, I believe, and I was mainly working on the southern, exclusively actually working on the southern side, the valley of this glacier and the valley of this glacier here. And in the next slide you see the total map. It's not very well focused, but still what I showed you, this is the first glacier leading up to the summit, which is actually here, and this was the second glacier which we could see in the previous slide. So this is this semi-circular glacier, and this is the first glacier here in my map. This is the so-called Barum Valley. The major valley, the Chitral Valley, or Mastuch Valley, because the river is called Mastuch, this is down here. And I'm a little bit concentrating now on this part because I'm showing you one more thing, which I believe is useful to enhance trust in maps. First of all, anybody who does something, who makes the field mapping, who makes the cartographic drawing, who makes the stereo restitution of stereo aerial or satellite imagery, they all have to be mentioned. It's always bad if you produce a map and by the end of the day you say, actually I did a lot for this map, but they didn't even mention my name. I could show you so many examples where I just overviewed and corrected maps, but I just did because I said, okay, I'm the senior, the young guys, their name is important. They should be written on the map. But still, why I'm showing this to you. Up to here, you can easily, in the main valley, there's a cheap road, which is a nice, cheapable road. However, into this valley here, to the village of Riri and the village of Param, this is four-wheel driving, you know. I was here in this village of Riri, and up here, I saw in my satellite imagery and in the stolen aerial photography, which my friend was able to arrange, that something is wrong. Why? I show you. Here you see these strange bluish things. This is again marble. Marble is a very valuable stone in the Himalayas, not only in Himalayas, worldwide. Bright whitish marble. And strange enough, here in this part, all these marble strikes continued, but this one not. Why? What happens here? Is it covered by scree or something is wrong? This has to be clarified. Maybe once you go up there with your hammer, you see, it actually continues. Strange enough. So I was down here in Riri. It was the last but one day of my 4 weeks field work. I was already pretty tired, and I was standing here and said, should I really go up from 2,000 to 3,800 or 3,900? There is no path. It's just scree and scrambling. And I said, no way. But I have to be honest. I have to say, I didn't clarify this question mark there. And this is why eventually I said, okay, I put it here, unsolved. Maybe this is an invitation for a young mountain geologist or whatever to say, in Manfred's map there was a question mark. I want to show what's the case there, what's going on there. I want to solve this problem. So this is an example of we always have to try to come as close to truth in our maps as possible. This should not just be geofantasy. It has to be as close to reality as possible, right? Yeah, once again, a big question mark. Now, you saw these lines here. This is all this is all geological faults. Here you see a lot, here a very long one, here a set of subparallel geological faults, and as we saw here also a set of geological faults in west-northwest, east-southeast direction. And how could I map them? And there I have to tell you, I didn't map them all in the field. I used, of course, satellite imagery. What you see here is just a very poor example of the area I mapped in the Wakhan and in the Hindu Kush in Pakistan and Afghanistan using satellite imagery, and in some areas also aerial photography. Being honest and being true, being trustful. Once again, what you see here is topography by the geodesist Professor Kostka with assistance of 2 young students, Gerlind and Martin, G&M. They also assisted, and their names should be given. It's not only the big prof, the big scientist or something, but everybody who participated, who contributed to a map has to be mentioned. Projection, Universal Traverse Mercator, UTM, you know that. Huh? Who is responsible for the names and the transcription? We had a language scientist from University of Vienna, Nicholas Scholz, who was responsible for that. Geology was my thing, based on field mapping, the major valleys, passes and peaks, and the evaluation of aerial photography and Landsat imagery. Who made the general layout of the map? There was a lady from the Geological Survey in Vienna, Maria Ledolter, she did it. Who made the actual map drawing in those days, still scribing on a metal sheet, right? So this was again Maria and Mr. Stani, the boss of the cartography unit there. Reproduction technique, another guy, Mr. Yilka from the university, and eventually who was responsible for printing. So they all have to be listed. Because this is something which I believe even nowadays in the digital age is more important than before. Everybody who does some work, and in those days it was not just pressing the button of a computer, but it was real handwork, weeks, months. This is something important. I mentioned that soon after Tiruchmir we moved to south to the area of Chitral. Tiruchmir would be up here, and down here is Chitral, and here in the center of our map, here is the city of Chitral once again, and this is the geological map of Chitral. Hindu Kush, North Pakistan, at a scale of 1 to 100,000, which is by far the most detailed geological map. Not even the Geological Survey of Pakistan had a map like this of this area in 1990. It was around 95. Nice thing, but this is one more geological map. The importance of this map is that for the whole Himalayan range, for the so-called HKH, Hindu Kush Karakoram Himalaya range, which is not so small. It's actually as big as the Andes, so one of the two very, very big, and last not least, the highest mountain range in the world. And for this HKH, for this Himalayan chain, this was the first GIS, the first geological GIS ever. There were some geological geoinformation systems generated in the plainlands, in the hilly terrain of India, of Tibet, of Pakistan, but nothing from the Himalayas. This was the first geological geoinformation system in the Himalayan mountains. And even in the Alps, we didn't have so much of this in the early 90s. So, this was, by the way, a master thesis of one of my students, a lady who unfortunately couldn't go into the field with me. There were two Austrian geologists from the Alps who grew up in the Alps, and they did part of the field work with me, more in the valleys. And one of the big things was to move up here close to the border to Pakistan. By the way, I never experienced so many weapons, so many rifles, so many heavy weapons than there. Heaps and lorry loads of weapons of Western and Eastern, from Western and Eastern countries. Just, yeah, ridiculous. Huh? And from there actually, and they were all going, the people were from Pakistan moving into Afghanistan, which in those days was occupied by the Soviet Union, by the Russians. Not Soviet Union, by the Russians then. And I had to cross from here over this glacier field, 4,500 to 5,000 meters and make a crossing over to Chitral. So from up here, from the very northwest of my map down to Chitral, this was all, and this is actually what you see here. This is this mapping which I did. And coming to this map, again, in the form of a map, all the sources, who mapped, when, where, what. Very, very important. And in this, okay. Yeah, and this allowed me eventually to solve the geological structure, which was unsolved before, because this traverse was necessary to understand the geology. And even before, there were a few publications who said, if somebody could make the crossing of this western part of Chitral, then it might be possible to understand what's going on here. And that is a big fold here, and then comes a syncline, an anticline, a syncline, and another fold here. And before, this could not be solved. So I was very happy to succeed in this mapping. Let's leave the Hindu Kush Himalaya Karakoram range and move northwards. We are now moving close to, wait, I go back a little bit, and on one of the maps, I think here, somewhere you saw, yeah, here you saw Pic Communismus. Today it has a new name. Former Soviet Union, today it's at the border between Kyrgyzstan up north here in this part and Tajikistan up here. And we are now moving to this area, and actually a little bit further north, here begin the Pamir mountain and actually the Tian Shan mountains, and this is where we go now, because we move to one of the most beautiful sites, the Issyk-Kul UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Issyk-Kul is the second biggest mountain lake of the world after Titicaca Lake. You heard about Titicaca Lake on the Altiplano of Bolivia. I know both lakes. This is also very impressive, but I have to tell you, once in summertime, you are swimming at an elevation of, how high is it? Honestly, I can't remember, 2,500, 3,000 meters, and you see the snow and glacier covered mountains around you. This is something very, very special. However, you should try to be in that upper part of the lake, because the deeper you get, the colder the water becomes. Anyway, Issyk-Kul, second biggest mountain lake of the world, and important for the Soviet Union, because in Soviet times there was one of the test sites and construction sites of the Soviet Union of submarine military ships, military submarines, and this was here. And why did they place it there? Because the whole lake is, I think, 600 meters deep. So they could even dive to 600 meters and check the quality of the submarines up there. So the submarines were, the prototypes of the Soviet submarines were constructed there, high up in the mountains of Tian Shan. And then, after they were tested, the results were brought to the European part of the Soviet Union, and there the actual building was done, right? And I was in this area. You're high up in the mountain, beautiful mountain, like in the Salzkammergut of my beloved Salzkammergut of the Alps, Austrian Alps. And then you see military submarine construction. Yeah. Hopefully these times are over. Anyway, you see the scale 1 to 350,000, health, spas, resorts, historical and cultural sites, hiking and rafting tours. This was an invitation by UNESCO to me because UNESCO asked the German government asked the GIT, the Gesellschaft für internationale technologische Zusammenarbeit in Frankfurt, and they asked me to make this map. And I asked one of my students to make his master thesis. And in addition, we also we made something for tourism. We generated the Issyk-Kul Trail, which was a trail around the lake in, I guess, 14 days. Very, very beautiful. And you could also go down to the lake and do some swimming, and then go up and do some, touch the snow, and so very, very beautiful. Location map of Issyk-Kul. I had shown it to you before, because I have to say all my maps are either in Dresden or in Leipzig in an archive. And honestly, this is some of the few maps I still found in Austria. And when he invited me, since then I never traveled to Leipzig, I never traveled to Dresden, so I have to apologize that I'm lacking some slides. But anyway, this is the eastern end, the far eastern end of Kyrgyzstan. And I'm telling you an interesting story about this very eastern end of Kyrgyzstan in the next second. And this is one of the biggest glaciers even nowadays, after the Fejenko Glacier in the Pamirs. Here in Tian Shan, the Inilchek Glacier, which spreads into a northern and a southern branch. The southern branch is in between two very important peaks, Peak Bob Yedi, down here, 7,500 meters, not quite, and the highest one of Tian Shan, and Peak Khan Tengri, who was long believed to be 7,010 meters, and the people who summited it, it's not an easy, both peaks are not very difficult. I was up on 7,000 meters, and those poor guys, they were never on 7,000, they were only at 6,995, 5 meters missing, bad enough. Now, the western end of Kyrgyzstan, between Peak Khan Tengri and Peak Bob Yedi, over this 6,200 meter peak over here, this part here is nowadays Chinese. There was no discussion at all from one day to the other, because I was frequently working in Kyrgyzstan due to one of my former PhD students who I got to know in Dehradun in India. She always invited me and said, the government wants you, Manfred, please, could you come to Bishkek, we need you, da da da. So many years I did some work there, and one day I was not yet in the field, not yet in the Tian Shan, I was in Bishkek. We got a letter from Beijing. We want to tell you that the eastern part of Kyrgyzstan is now Chinese. We need more water. And this, you see here, there's a lot of, this is all glaciated. It's all turquoise. So this part between Peak Bob Yedi, here and here, this all belong to, from one day to the other. If you are the president of Kyrgyzstan, I was saying, no, I will shoot you, I will send my military to Beijing and destroy Beijing, because this was always Kyrgyz terrain and will always be. What are you doing? You just say, okay, yes, Mr. What's the guy's name in Beijing? Yes, this is now Chinese. Thank you that you didn't take our whole country. And you know, you are there. I was in Kyrgyzstan at that time. You say, is he going to take all of Kyrgyzstan? I cannot even fly back to Vienna. One of these stories you can experience. But let's come to more positive sides. On the back of this map, we showed all these historical and cultural sites, the museum, the nature reserves. By the way, here you see some 91. So this map was, I think, between 95 and 2000 we generated it. And also we produced a geoinformation system of the whole UNESCO biosphere. Yeah. Here it is. You can have a closer look, and there you also see all the details of this map. I also put it here.
Maybe should we make a small title
this is a 10 minutes film. And I would have liked to still to do this, and then when do we have to finish? 5:30 or when?
5:20 is the limit.
5:20. Yeah, if you don't mind, you can sleep during this video. It's honestly, I don't care if I remember how many times I no, there were a few.
I have to go today, so I will see you tomorrow.
Never mind. Thanks for joining. There were a few lectures where I did not fall asleep, but I was a very gifted sleeper during lectures. Honestly, I tell you, this was very bad because then I had to look it up in the books and things like this. But so I have full understanding, without kidding, very seriously. But maybe still this one, and then we are done. This is actually. Yeah, there would be some. This is a film, a TV film, who was produced by Dreisat in Germany, and it's actually about map production for the Andes. And I have to tell you, most of the maps I made were made in the Andes. This was the time when GPS was coming up, and in the back you see an E-Trax GPS system, and I'm giving some explanation for the TV viewers to understand how nowadays this was, I can tell you, in 2001, how map making was 20 years ago. We used satellite imagery, we used, of course, all the existing maps and everything we could get. Aerial photography, of course, and in Chile this is possible, and a GPS. In those days, this was something new. Today you say GPS. I have it here. But in those days, it was really something. And of course, we used not just a simple thing, but we used geodetic GPSs with a high resolution. What you see here is that we made a stereo. We made stereo solutions, but we ordered the best satellite imagery we could get, of course, in digital form, and we made different prints at different scales. We also used this. This was a mistake, because I cannot get back. Yeah. Wait. Sorry. We also made anaglyph stereo pairs, and we could, prior to going into the field, get a 3D impression of the relief. And this is, of course, very important, because otherwise you say, map day 1, I go up to this 6,000 meter peak, day 2 here, and in reality you say, once you see it in 3D, or in reality, things look different. You say, no, after 2 summits, I need 2 days of rest or something. So I decided so that we can have a joint discussion to produce anaglyphs. And you saw, we were, I guess, 3 or 4 of us sitting in front of the screen, and everybody could see the terrain in 3D, which is sort of nice. And this is what we used for the planning of this expedition. This was again a 7 or 8 weeks expedition. Yeah, I think 8 weeks. And I mean, you have to imagine the area where we made this map, Ojos del Salado in Argentina, is the highest volcano on Earth, the second highest peak of the Andes. Only Aconcagua is 60 meters higher. So it's 6,900, 890, I think, or 900. Yeah, 895. So 6,900 meters. And to map up in this area is already a little bit strenuous, right? So it needed a good presentation. See, 3 people of us. This is one of my master students here again, this lady. And we are just discussing. This guy is now 85, and he joined me for some skiing 2 months ago in the Austrian Alps. He's from Dresden. Yeah, and then this was made by our university, by the filming unit of TU Dresden, but for a TV film. And this is Copiapó, the capital of the province number 3, Atacama. And this is a flight over the Atacama Desert. The Atacama Desert goes to the Pacific Ocean and reaches from the Pacific Ocean up to the main divide of the Andes, having Argentina in the east and further north Bolivia. Yeah, there you see, this is two students. This is all we bought in Copiapó for these 7 or 8 weeks. And then, of course, 4-wheel drives. And then we left Copiapó and drove up to our Kartengebiet, to our mapping area, which is 65 by 65 kilometers close. Atacama is the driest desert on Earth. It's even much drier than the ones you have in the west, close to Pakistan, and it's drier than Sahara. I've been working in Sahara. I've been working in Arabian deserts. I've been working in Taklamakan, but this is really very, very, very dry. But I was also lucky to be one of the few scientists who experienced very, very heavy rain showers, which happens every 10 years or so. This is on the surface of a salar. The salars are the salt lakes, and the salt lakes are populated by flamingos. And here you see one of these flamingos taking off, the takeoff of a flamingo. And here you see this is a real desert. This is not just high mountains. This is a high mountain desert. In Spanish it's called Alta Atacama, high altitude Atacama. So the driest desert on Earth and also the highest desert on Earth with the highest volcano and also the highest active volcano, because up close to the top there is still a little bit of smoke coming out from small holes. And this is Laguna Verde, 4,350 meters high, 4,350, it's not that low, almost as high as Mont Blanc, the highest peak of Europe. And this is where we always had our base camp. And I have to tell you that I already fell in love with this area. Down here you see our base camp. There is a small hut with a indoor pool sort of, and this is where we had put our base camp. You might call it a camping site, but in fact it's just, yeah, desert. And I have to say, since '95, I think, until my retirement 6 years ago, every year I spent some time mapping there. And I mean, not only topographic mapping, but we did some geological mapping, ice mapping, permafrost mapping, and things like this. This is the border, Paso de San Francisco, the border to Argentina, and our map actually reached over the border into Argentina. This is the highest mountain Ojos del Salado. This guy was a filmer. It's actually my son, who earned, not like me as a mountain guide and ski instructor, but as a filmer, money during his studies. And he got, I didn't mention that he's my son, I mentioned his company, and he got the contract from, I think, Dreisat to be our filmer. So I didn't say, he's my son, he has to be. No, but so he joined us. And I knew that he could easily climb to 6,900 meters, and actually he also filmed up to the summit when we did our summit mapping. Yeah, again here, and actually I think there's no need for the original soundtrack of the TV film, because I can also tell you what we did. In the background, Ojos del Salado, and up here we went close to the Argentinian border. Right now we might be at 5,000, close to 6,000 meters maybe. I don't think exactly. No, 5,300 it says. Anyway, so, and here we made, this is ancient maps. This is actually an old Chilean map which covers still the border, and this is where we discussed, is it correct or not? We had satellite imagery, we had the old low quality topographic maps from Chile, anything available, and then of course we improved this. And in the evenings, this is at the military border station on the Chinese side. He was also a master student of mine. She was a master student of mine. So this is of course also a nice thing for a student. And this is adventure. We got stuck on a salar, no way to escape. We tried to see, no way. So eventually what we did is that, I think it was either my son or me or we together, we went for 3 hours to our base camp, said we got stuck, and then I guess 1 or 2 other pickups came, and with a long line of, here you can see it, eventually maybe of 50 meters, eventually we pulled, it was only one. Okay, now you see, the first attempt was not successful, but we were able to pull out this car. Every couple of days, every 3-4 days, we had a discussion what to do, what has been reached. We had individual teams of 2 to 3 persons, nobody single allowed at this elevation. And he was a geographer. He was a physical geographer, and he wanted to do his minor in cartography with me. He was an excellent rock climber in the Bohemian sandstone, a very extreme and strong guy. He's now prof either in Switzerland or America. Yeah, prof of geography. And during these meetings we decided what to do next. This is also based on a simulation made previous to our expedition with the available relief models of this area and the available satellite imagery. Now we are reaching the advanced base camp, the end of the road, so to speak, or the drivable track. There they put one of these trailer homes, I can say, there, and from there we started mapping the actual Ojos del Salado massif, so the highest part of our map area. You have to imagine once you sleep at, say, 5,800 meters or so, Anyway, by 2 or 3 in the morning we got up on our summit day for mapping, and what you see here is just the view from close to the summit in the early morning down to a few clouds in the plains. The important thing, why are you not only using satellite imagery? In these areas where you have no vegetation, you cannot see where the actual trails are going. You won't see this trail. Once you're in the field, you see, there are the tracks of the alpinists. But in satellite imagery, you can't say, you cannot map a trail up to the summit of Ojos del Salado. You really need to be there, either in the jungle, where the trails are hidden by the leaves, or in this look, where would you find a trail there? Impossible. So you really have to go into the field, and honestly, except of a few maps in the Andes, I've always been everywhere, in every map area of the maps I generated. And this is the summit view. It's indeed very impressive. And imagine desert, and there's so much snow, but you're above 6,000 meters. Anyway, this map is still frequently sold. You see it here. It was published by the German Alpine Club. They asked us to do this. And of course, I immediately agreed because I had fallen in love with this map. And this is after our field expedition back to the university. Yeah, we had difficult geodetic problems between Argentina and Chile, of course, because even like here in Europe between Switzerland and France, Switzerland and Germany, there are no problems anymore. But before, I still remember some 50 years ago, in the border area we had big problems, and also between Austria and Italy, for instance. Anyway, here you see already a preprint of this map. I'm sitting in my office and talking to the cartographers in Munich, the Alpine Club cartographers, and those are my guys, the lady who we saw in the field. And now we are discussing what still has to be corrected. This was the altitude of the Paso, the pass road into Argentina. So jointly we checked our maps and improved them. It was not only me, but I was always one who said, no, I'm so much linked to the map making, I might oversee mistakes. A neutral person can much better find mistakes. And here we discussed again the digital terrain model, to what degree we might use it for the hill shading, for the relief and rock depiction in the map. And this is where I personally, this was professorial work, where I did my activities for the summit map. Here we have a little map, a detailed map at the scale of, I don't know what, 15,000 or 30,000. This is a 100,000 map, and this is a detailed map of the summit area, so that people who really want to go up to the summit can see all the rock faces and the glaciers and the crevasses and all that. This is very nice because it shows the individual layers of a map. This is relief, nothing else but the elevation contours. This is the hill shading, and all of a sudden relief becomes vivid. This is the rock layer and the glacier layer. This is the hydro layer, the rivers and the lago, the blue lake there. And this is eventually the roads and the trails. And I think, and this is the borderline between Chile and Argentina. Eventually, the geographic names. Yeah, and I think this is quite impressive for a layman. You are experts to see out of what thematic layers eventually a map is generated. Yeah, and this was then the last but one, printing in the office with two of my colleagues, and the one guy, the taller guy, is also well known to Professor Kropacek, and then I have to sign it, and then it goes into printing, and this is in the printing office of the Bavarian government in Munich, and this is the chief cartographer of the German Alpine Club, and together we are checking the printing quality, and honestly, except of my Andean maps, who were all printed in Santiago, I always checked, I was present during the printing. And this is in the tourist office in Copiapó, where 1 year later they were putting, you saw it, they were putting the ready-made map. And this now I think is the right moment